Through their housing fund, Amazon is creating and preserving affordable homes with 99-year affordability commitments so families can live in the communities where they work for generations to come.
At Amazon, we believe everyone should have access to a home they can afford, and we're partnering locally to help make that possible.
Support from partners like Amazon help us continue advancing projects that are grounded in our community priorities.
Amazon, proud supporter of local communities like yours.
And now, the Cascade PBS Ideas Festival, featuring journalists and newsmakers from around the country in conversation about the issues making headlines. Thank you for joining us for Radio Atlantic, from the Atlantic, with Nancy Pelosi, moderated by Hanna Rosin. Before we begin, a special thank you to our members. We'd also like to thank our premier event sponsors, Amazon and HX Expeditions, our founding sponsor and session sponsor, the Carrie and Linda Killinger Foundation, and our host venue, Fremont Studios.
Welcome to the 2026 Cascade PBS Ideas Festival. I'm Hanna Rosin, the host of Radio Atlantic, and with me today, Representative Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker Emerita of the House. Welcome, everyone. We're coming on, it's 39 years, about, which is amazing.
Next week.
June 9th is the anniversary of your swearing in, right?
Right.
Yeah, amazing. Which means you have 5 months to go. How are you liking the term emerita? Like, do you feel relieved? Like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore? Or do you feel panicked? Like, what do I do now?
Well, I'm only there for one reason right now, in addition to meeting the needs of my constituents, but my purpose is to win the House for the Democrats. And that's it. That's it. So right now, it's like every day counts and have to make every day count. And so I'm not looking in terms of 5 months or what, that's what it is. 5 days minus about 5 months minus about 3 days, and we will have the election. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that the election will be safe and will be protected, that we will win the election, and what we will do when we do. So I'm busy.
Yeah, I knew you weren't going to sound like a person who's 5 months from the way a lot of us would sound if we were 5 months from retirement. It's just impossible to imagine. Like, when I think Nancy Pelosi, I think action verbs like wrangling. You know, there are things we associate with you, and none of them are fishing. Help us. So, looking at the House map, help us understand from your perspective. Is looking at the map of the nation and winning the House, do you think of it the same way you think of winning a vote, like gathering your people? Is it the same kind of thing?
Well, let's define our terms. When we say winning the House, let's think back to our founders. As we mostly celebrate the 250th anniversary of the July 4th, 1776. And then what they did after that to write the Constitution. They wrote in the Constitution very clearly about the House and its purpose. So in order to talk about what we want to do, it's important to note this. Our founders thought that the House of Representatives should be a reflection of the American people. And that's why there's proportional representation. The Senate at the time, we have 40 million people in California. We have 2 senators. Some other states have 1 million persons. They have 2. But that's what we take an oath to protect and defend. And they were at the time just appointed by like the state legislature, just to go back in history a bit. But the founders did the one thing that they had total agreement on is they did not want a monarch. They did not want a demagogue. So the way they set up the Constitution for the election was the president would have a 4-year term and the House would have a 2-year term. So people ask me all the time, including members, how come we have to run every 2 years? It's because of the genius of our founders. They wanted the race for the House in 2 years to be a referendum on the executive. And that's exactly how it turns out. So when we go to the polls, well, we're going now, but for the general election, it will be a referendum on what is happening at the executive branch and the surrender of the House of Representatives to that executive. That's not what the founders had in mind. The exquisite beauty of the Constitution was the separation of powers, separate and equal. Jamie Raskin says to me, we're not equal, we're superior, we're Article 1, but nonetheless. But think of it in terms of what they had in mind. So when we say we have to win the House, that means we have to beat a referendum as our founders intended, that we not have a monarch or a demagogue or someone usurping the power of the House of Representatives, the Congress of the United States. So we fully intend to do just that.
What would you put the chances of Democrats winning the House right now?
Not only are we going to win the House, we're going to win big. That's what it is, and that's what our plan is.
So the person you've been alluding to but not mentioned by name, I remember hearing you on a podcast right before the presidential election, and this is painful to read now. What you said was, I can't even envision a situation where he could win. If he were to win and we didn't win the House, imagine how horrible it would be. I can hardly sleep at night as it is, but that would be unthinkable, impossible for our country. Now, your wish did not come true. So the question is, has it been just as you expected, worse than you expected? Sort of how is it rolled out?
Let us again define our terms. You're talking about, what's his name?
Yeah. He who shall not be named. Since you're not naming him, I'll take your lead.
No, it's worse. Yeah. This is worse. I mean, the fact is that I didn't come here to talk about him. I came here to talk about me, but okay, we'll talk about him. No, I'm teasing. This is worse. Look what is at stake. What the vision of our founders. A constitution where people are represented, where freedom of the press, freedom of speech, all democratic freedoms in the Bill of Rights. And then you have rule of law, due process, separation of powers. My personal favorite, independent judiciary, Supreme Court. So there's so much at stake in this election coming, not that we can change the court right now, but this is an election we must win. But I say to people, because people are concerned about our democracy, and we need to be. But I said, when we campaign, we just can't be talking about, we save our democracy at the kitchen table. This is about lowering the cost of kitchen table issues, lowering the cost and increasing the availability and accessibility of health care, and it's about ending the corruption that is going on in Washington, D.C. That's what people vote on. We always have to make a distinction, Hanna, between what is important, and we can all agree on so many important things, and what people vote on, which is what is important to them at that time, the cost of living, affordability, and that's the fight that we are in.
In your book, The Art of Power, you talk about managing a lot of presidents. George Bush, you talk about John McCain, that just how you handle each one, your intuition. How did you handle Donald Trump? Like if you had to strategize or you had to get something done or sort of you needed the White House for some reason, how did you do it?
Well, I didn't manage any of those people, but I respected them. You always want the President of the United States to succeed, assuming they honor the vision of our founders and the aspirations of our children, and of course, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. And for the most part, Democratic or Republican, that was never an issue. We always were patriots. And as I say, you want the president to succeed. In order for there to be cooperation and all the rest, there has to be some truth. I guess that's the best word I could say. some validity as to what that person's agenda might be for our country. So we're having a difference of opinion on policy. I'd rather not talk personally about.
I am genuinely curious because you're so strategic in the book. You're so good at reading people, understanding what you need from each person and how to get it to sort of get everything on everybody, like all the House members. It's so many people. You know, it's like you have 10,000 children and you have to get them all in line. It's kind of amazing. So I did wonder about how you, when you're faced with a situation like this, but you do have some duty to the country, like, did you have any personal interactions or any insights about, well, how do you get something done here?
Well, the first term was better than the second term. The first term was not great, don't get me wrong, but the second term is just something else. But I always, from my standpoint, you're asking me how I did that, I had two things. One was I considered myself a weaver at the loom. And I wanted to make sure every single person in our caucus knew that the thread that they brought to that tapestry was essential. So whether they could be for a certain bill at a certain time didn't mean that their effectiveness was diminished. Tomorrow is another day for other things. But I wanted them also all to know that when we're in a place, the job title and the job description are one and the same, Hannah. Representative. Mm-hmm. So people are representing their districts. That has to be respected. The other thing is, and I think you would probably understand this in your lives practically, it's all a kaleidoscope. One day, the Democrats and the Republicans will be totally opposite. Another day, the front of the room versus the back of the room, some Democrats, some Republicans, will be in a different format. Just like a kaleidoscope, you turn that dial. So everybody is a resource to you, so you don't want to harm anyone because they could be your vote to get something over the top the next time. But it's always can change. Some of us here versus those in the back, those over there vote, you know my point. We're all a resource to each other. That's how it used to be. Now, with in the White House, it becomes something that he just owns the Republican Party, and that's very sad because it's not what our founders had in mind, and it isn't, shall we say, as wholesome as it should be. As far as the presidents are concerned, I would say to each one of them, I will never ask you to do anything that isn't in your interest. For example, I said to the president, would you like to be doing something together on health care? What's his name? With health care. I want you to make sure you know which president I'm talking about. Yeah. Health care. Well, there's always room for improvement, and you may have some different thoughts that we can put together. Nothing. No.
What do you mean? So I'm actually asking a much simpler question, which is, what were your conversations like? Like, did you
with him?
Talk to him? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did you want some examples?
Yes, I would love some examples.
Don't share those thoughts about conversation. We have a reasonable rapport in part of the first term, you know, but then we had to impeach him twice. So,
so he wasn't a fan.
No, he wasn't what?
A fan.
A fan? No. But the thing is, as somebody said to me the other day, I fought really hard for you to impeach the president. I said, you didn't do any such thing. There's only one person responsible for the two impeachments of Donald Trump, and that person's name is Donald Trump. He gave us no choice. He violated the Constitution of the United States and committed acts described in the Constitution as impeachable. The fact that the founders, getting back to our friends, the founders knew there could be a rogue president. So that's why they had impeachment in the Constitution. But they didn't realize that they could have a rogue president and a rogue Senate, and which is what they did.
Do you all remember the moment that Representative Pelosi ripped up the speech? Okay, It was so memeable. I feel like it's just going to be around forever. Did you think of that on the spot?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
I'll tell you, on a couple of spots. One, here's where it was. We go to the State of the Union, and again, want to be respectful. They're guests in our house, the House of Representatives. I'm the head Speaker of the House. By the way, the Speaker is the only member of Congress, House or Senate, that is mentioned in the Constitution. So take that responsibility very seriously as to be the Speaker of the whole House. So anyway, when the President comes in, you probably notice that they hand a copy of the speech to the Vice President, a copy to the Speaker. So I have my copy there, and he started to speak, and what I was hearing was not consistent with fact. So I tore a little piece, and I said, I have to remember that on this page, it wasn't true. And then the next page, it wasn't true. And then the next page, it wasn't true. The whole speech was really a manifesto of misrepresentations. So at the end, I thought, I have to tear this speech up because the whole thing, every single page had misrepresentation, but worse than misrepresentation, lies. So I don't like to use the word lies. So and I thought, oh, my staff, they're really going to, because we never talked about tearing up the president's speech. No president was ever, we may have a difference of opinion, but nothing like that. I mean, he talked politics, which you don't do in the State of the Union. He talked, he gave a presidential award to one of his whatevers, and he just misused the House of Representatives, of which I was the Speaker. So I had to then tear it up, but I thought my staff's going to really not like this, I don't think. But it's on parchment. The speech is on parchment. So you just can't do this. You have to do this, and this, and this.
I mean, did you have to do it in front of the cameras? I realized you had to do it. No, it was amazing.
Yeah, I had to do it in front of the cameras because he did it in front of the cameras.
Fair. One thing, so the Affordable Care Act, you mentioned it. I think maybe a lot of people forget how on the brink that was of not happening, and how critical you were to getting it passed. And the book does a great job of describing it. One thing that I did not realize until reading your book was that both you and President Obama understood at that moment that this was a propaganda war, not a policy war. That what you were going to be, you guys both talked about it in terms of they're going to tell lies about this. And then I thought, is that the seeds of the world we live in now? Was that the first time when the weapons in a policy war were propaganda and lies?
No, that happened under Newt Gingrich in the 90s. That was really where it really changed. He told his members to call us traitors and treasonous and all. That's really when that started. But on the Affordable Care Act, for 100 years, presidents had tried, starting with the Republican president. Teddy Roosevelt wanted to have access to quality, affordable health care for everyone. And then Franklin Roosevelt tried to have it but in Social Security, but they couldn't go that far. And then Truman did Medicare, but he couldn't pass it until LBJ passed it. And LBJ went to Independence, Missouri, and signed it with President Truman right there. So that was a step forward. So this for us, and then the Clintons tried with their attempt at that. So this for us was 100 years of attempts. It was a challenge, a generational challenge to get this done. We could not fail. And when President Obama came into office, we were ready. But he was ready, and he was true to the mission. God bless him for that. The night we passed the bill, he called me and said, I'm happier tonight than I was the night I was elected president. And I said, Mr. President, I'm pretty happy tonight too, but if you weren't elected president, we wouldn't have this night. But it was just beautiful because he just knew it chapter and verse, and really wonderful.
I want to talk about Congress more broadly. It is remarkable the degree to which Congress has ceded its powers to the executive branch, from the demolition of the East Wing to the war in Iran. Now, I imagine you would say, well, just elect Democrats. But is there a deeper, more structural problem that's developed here?
I don't think there's a deeper, I just think we have to win, yes. But I do think that there are plenty. I keep saying, some people don't appreciate it, the country needs a strong Republican Party. By that, I do not mean a cult. I mean a strong Republican Party, the GOP. Great leaders for our country and did great things for our country, and we have to get that back. But in addition to that, there has to be a return to civility in our country. And we have to remember what our founders said, the goodness of the American people, to listen to them, to have them share their views about, because you're all an intellectual resource to us. And then sometimes that falls into a political separation, but that's okay. But not to the point of saying that we reject the Constitution that we take an oath to protect and defend.
In that context, what do you think about the gerrymandering war that has opened up? I mean, your successor as House Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, has said maximum warfare everywhere all the time. The Democrats have definitely jumped into the gerrymandering war. How do you feel about that?
Let me back up on that. We had, when we won the majority in 2018, so 19 we went in, and then when when President Biden was elected in 20, our first bill on his desk was H.R. 1, For the People Act. And one of the major provisions of the bill was no more partisan gerrymandering. There has to be a federal law that said each state will have a commission, will have nonpartisan redistricting. We have to get to that place. Now,
but the Democrats don't seem to take that position anymore.
No, they do. You slap me in the face, I'll slap you right back. So they did what they did in Texas. Winning this election is too important. So we didn't want to do what we did in California. But if they're going to try to take 5 seats in Texas, we'll take 5 seats in California. I don't. Let me say this. I would rather not have done that. But I'm not going to let them get away with taking 5 seats and then going here and going there. I know some people like to say, turn the other cheek. No, I'll turn once I punch you in yours.
Okay, I feel like I want to rip up my speech just for...
No, I don't mean to sound that way, but it's about not politicians choosing their constituents. It's about constituents choosing their elected officials, and that's where it has to be.
After the last election, there was a lot of hand-wringing among Democrats. Who do we need to be? What do we need to evolve into? What should our policies be? What should our message be so that this doesn't happen again? Do you have a clear answer to that? What the Democrats need to evolve into or change?
No, I think the Democrats know what they have to be, and that is, we are not a monolith. We represent different constituencies around the country. As I said, your job title and your job description, one and the same, representative. So I can't go in there and say, everybody should be like me because I'm from San Francisco and this is the right thing to do. You have to listen to other people's views and hopefully across the aisle. So there are elements, exuberances in the party now that should be heard and the rest. But when we have that vote, the first couple of days of January, we will all, not me because I won't be there, they will all be voting for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker. And then they will, as I said before, you build the consensus. You recognize the importance of every voice. And everybody doesn't think alike. That's not what a democracy is about. We could just go home and let one person speak for all of us if that's the attitude that people want the party to have. We are the Democratic Party. The Republican Party has a different attitude. They just do what they're told. That's not what we are.
Another part of the diversity is generational shift. So there's generation. There's a powerful young generation of politicians whose style is different. It's sort of movement, grassroots politics, plus social media influence. AOC is the most prominent example. There was a perception, maybe a media perception initially, that you were maybe resistant to that because it would fracture the Democratic Party, or it would somehow not keep the party together. Is that perception true? And has your view evolved on how to bring in this new style of politics?
Well, let us again define our terms. I was not for candidates coming in and running against our incumbents because we needed to win the House. In other words, weighing the equities, that was 18 when we were setting out to win again. Weighing the equities, we had to win because we were the referendum on that executive in the White House. We had to win. So no, I wasn't happy about people saying, let's spend a whole lot of money challenging Democrats. You want to do that, but don't think that that's something that is good for this year. Do it a year when we have the luxury of having the majority, but not when we're trying to. But you can't gain by losing. You can't lose your members. So AOC is wonderful. She's much more operational than I think people may think. So that wasn't the case. The big difference is just social media. That's, whatever your age is, that's made a real difference in politics. The point is, you have to be respectful of all that new energy and young people coming and seeing things in a different way. I mean, my grandchildren, I talk to them about politics. They have a different vocabulary and everything else. There's no question there's differences in age, but there's differences in experience as well as vocabulary and how you speak about things. But the idea that there will be those who would be out there to just take down the incumbents when this is our year to honor the Constitution of the United States, I'm not for that. You run anytime you want and do whatever you want to do, but don't expect that to be welcome when we've got to stay completely focused on saving the Constitution, but more importantly, helping people at the kitchen table in a way that should be universal in terms of our purpose. How we do it, that's a difference of opinion. I'm for winning.
We're out of time. There's going to be a lot of debate about your legacy, everything that you've accomplished for a long time after you leave the House. I will say, for me personally, one of the great legacies that you've left for me in my life is the Nancy Pelosi clap, which I employ all of the time. So let's give Nancy Pelosi a Nancy Pelosi clap.